folks, and welcome back to episode 5 of So What's New in the Biscuit Tin. I'm Jess.
And I'm Sam, and this episode is called Do I Have to Wear My Toile?
Yes, a contentious one, and we're very excited to tackle this topic today.
But before we tackle the topic, it's biscuit chat time.
It is time for biscuit chat. Now, I have to say, so many people... Sorry to interrupt you, Sam. Many people are actually really quite engaged with the biscuit chat. And every time we do it, I'm like, this isn't really sewing related, is it? But people love it. So, guys, if you continue to like the biscuit chat, do keep letting us know. We also love the long messages you send us after an episode where you go, I think I'm this biscuit. We absolutely live for those. So
yes, we do. And we're very much enjoying people asking other people. And yeah, we've got plenty more biscuit content to come. So don't worry. So, when we recorded this back in end of May, it was National Biscuit Day, which I didn't even know was a thing, but wasn't surprised because there's a national day for everything.
I celebrated and went out and bought some biscuits for, I'm sure, related reasons.
Yeah, I remembered I had a stash of biscuits from the Southern Social, so broke into them.
You do.
So I thought I would ask our lovely podcast listeners, as it's National Biscuit Day, what is their favourite biscuit? Because we ask people what biscuit they are, but we don't ask them what their favourite biscuit is.
That's true.
So a bit of
that's a different question.
Today.
That's a very different question, actually.
So, first of all, let's start with, I'll tell you do you want to know the person or the biscuit on the people that you might know?
Tell me the biscuit.
Okay. Dark chocolate digestive.
Oh, that's really familiar. Someone's told me they're a dark chocolate digestive. Is it Yvette?
It isn't Yvette, no.
Yvette.
It is a guest. They were a guest.
Oh, they were a guest. Dark chocolate digestive.
It wasn't how they describe themselves. Yes, it is Tamlin.
Yeah, those were my two guesses in my head. But Yvette's more of a hobnob person. And I do remember having quite a long conversation with her about that.
Yeah,
because this is what we talk about now.
Yeah, and it's not how Tamlin describes herself. She described herself as a digestive, but her favourite is dark chocolate digestives. So, do you remember Angela, who was at the Southern Social, the lady who's very knowledgeable?
Yes, I do. Fantastic hair.
Yeah, what biscuit do you think is her favourite biscuit?
Her favourite? Ooh, okay. Did we talk about this on the day? Again, I think we might have. Is she a custard cream?
No.
Oh,
I feel like she could enjoy. She is a digestive.
Oh my God, we've got a lot of people
here.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if we know this lovely listener, but this lovely listener's gone for Garibaldi. Her name is Lizzie. And what a great choice.
Yeah, what a throwback. I haven't... Do you know what? We used to have those as a kid all the time. And I'm going to ask you a very important question, which is, what did you call Garibaldis when you were younger?
Garibaldis.
So in my house, and I don't know why, but this is very relevant to the pod, they were called squash fly biscuits.
Yeah, we call raisins squash flies, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really glad. You know when you think back to something and you go... Was that a dream or was that a thing? Like, should we do that? But yeah, because it's so weird to me that Garibaldis, I think, and please fact check me on this, but I'm 90% Garibaldis are named after the Italian Revolutionary.
Oh, they could well be.
Who unified Italy, I'm pretty sure.
I've started falling down a hole of the history of biscuits. Google recommended to me the other day the history of why Bourbons are called Bourbons. So Google's clearly got a sense of my content now.
Oh my goodness. I absolutely love that. Also, I think we should ask the wonderful baker that sews if she bakes biscuits, and if so, if she'd like to come onto the podcast and do a double whammy with us about biscuits and sewing.
Yeah. So, now I know Liz does a lot. She does a lot of lovely cupcakes and cakes. I don't know if I've seen her do biscuits. Things. She does.
Well, we'll have to ask.
Kate was at Ripper Seams, I think, was at the social, wasn't she?
She was. She lent me her fabulous chalk pen that I want to steal.
Oh, yes. She's commented what biscuit she is. Now, if you can remember her...
she's a Tim Tam. We had a long conversation about this. She was so happy they stocked them in Waitrose. I love it.
Your knowledge of remembering people is brilliant. Now I don't know if I know the name of this person, but I'm very much enjoying their response. They've said custard creams currently it changes about once a month. I'm loving that their favourite biscuit is on that level of rotation.
I mean, that's phenomenal. I do think I know who it is. I think it's Joe.
I don't know if I know
whose
their name. Yes, it is Joe.
Yes. She's fabulous.
It's got the word mermaid in it.
It does, yes. She's called Fat Thighs and Mermaid Pants, which I adore as a handle, can I just say. She's brilliant. She's just, I love her content as well. I'll give her a follow if you don't already. But I just, like, she's just great fun. I feel like I must have spoken to her about this, or I've seen it somewhere, or maybe she commented on a pod thing. But yeah, nonetheless, love it. I love that.
And one last one. This person often comments and follows. Can I see their name? No, they don't post, but they follow, if you see what I mean. And they said, I love ginger nuts, but I can't get them in Germany. Oh, what a shame. I like a ginger nut biscuit.
That's such a shame. Oh my goodness, that's absolutely gutting, because I did not. Of course you can't, because they're ginger nuts and McVitie, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they are. Yeah. They're quite hard. I can see why people like to dip those in a cup of tea.
I love ginger nuts. This is going to show my weird side again, because I like a specific occasion for a specific biscuit.
Yes, you are. The biscuit occasions, yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? Well, I always have a ginger nut if I'm not well.
Okay.
But not like ill in bed ill. Like ill on a boat. Or ill
like
in
a bit
car.
seasick,
but also like if my blood pressure's gone a bit wibbly, I'm that kind of ill where I'm a bit dizzy and woozy, because they stop you feeling nauseous. Top tip, by the way.
Ginger is known for that, yeah.
Exactly, but also they've got quite a good amount of sugar in them without being sweet.
Yes.
So if you're feeling a bit sick and woozy and for anyone who doesn't know, I get incredibly seasick. Far too seasick, really, for someone who has sailed as much as I have. There was a lot of enforced sailing in my growing up. And I get very, I'm fine on a sunny day above deck. But below deck and in bad weather and night sailing, I am thrown up everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And I remember on one of our school sailing trips, we were in a proper North Atlantic Hebridean gale, and so much so we were meant to sail through the night and we didn't. We had to go find shelter because it was mental. I was like 14 and I threw up all day for hours. But you get to that point. There was a guy who was a friend of mine also being very sick, and he was actually diabetic, and they were like, no, you need to try and eat stuff, like keep your blood sugar stable. But we were both sat there, and just at the end, all we could eat was ginger nuts. And we were just sat there. We got through I think we got through most of the ship's rations of ginger nuts. We just ate them all. But I think the teachers were like, well, they're alive, so must be a good thing. But that's when I eat them. Or recently when I was in hospital and I hadn't been allowed to eat, the first thing that happened was when I came round, they were like, do you want a cup of tea and a biscuit? And I was like, yeah. And they brought the tray and I was like, can I have a ginger nut? And the nurse was like, yes, you can have 4. And I was like, absolute dream, thank you. So yes, specific occasion, but cannot recommend a ginger nut enough.
Yeah,
exactly.
I have food for specific. Yeah, I have food that's for specific occasions, but not many of them are biscuit related. I'm disappointed to tell you. Mine
what's
is
your sweet
tomatoes.
Thing?
My go-to sweet thing is sweets.
Actual sugary sweets.
Yeah, like sour ones, like proper sour, make your gums go back a bit level.
You're like
sour
Adam.
Sweets. Yeah.
Adam likes to sort of wrinkling his face up if it's so sour.
That's if I need a proper that's what I would choose, yeah. But I do have a favourite biscuit. Do you know what you think my favourite biscuit is?
You always describe yourself as a cookie, and I have a feeling you quite like them.
Yeah, I picture myself as more of a Maryland cookie, but my preference, if I buy them, is the big soft ones that are soft.
The big chunky, yeah.
Yeah, with a decent bit of chunk in them.
I've always thought, when I think of you, that's how you first described yourself to me in biscuit form, so it has stuck. Because as we know, my way of remembering people is, when you remember people because they have a great dog, and you may not know their name, so in your head they become great dog person, or like, you know, that's how I remember people. And in my head, because
we remember some of our neighbours further down. That house is called Shouty Man. That's what we call the house, because we can hear him shouting in the garden.
Exactly. And that's how I remember people. But for some reason, you liking cookies because you bought them on the drive up to Birmingham. That's the other thing.
Yes.
They were already in the car, so I was like, she must like them, as well as describing herself as one. I don't know if I have a favourite biscuit.
I was just going to say, that tears you a bit, doesn't it, to choose just one biscuit? Because
it does.
Depends on the occasion.
It does, but I think I can choose. Weirdly, although I have to say, by the way, the shortbread Mary gave us after that episode is now gone.
I've got one pack left. I've had to keep it in my car and ration myself.
It's so good.
It's so good.
Oh my goodness,
yes.
It is. Yeah. I've forgotten just how good.
Yeah, okay, it's really crummy though. Yeah, really crummy.
Oh god, yeah, it goes everywhere. Favourite biscuit. I mean, I'm sat next to a double pack of Marylands, but they're a comfort biscuit. I wouldn't say they're like my favourite.
I feel you stock them for emergencies. They're like a staple. You could have like a break glass in emergency for them, couldn't you?
I could. But like over the bank holiday, Adam and I were having a really chill time, and we both had a mid-afternoon, like we were so tired, we just had a nap, and we woke up really groggily at like 6 o'clock, and I was like, do you want a glass? We had Prosecco in the fridge, and I was like, do you want a Key Royale and half a packet of Oreos with me? And he was like, yeah. So we sat in bed, we put a film on, we just sat there with our champagne.
That's amazing. That to me is like full on indulgence. That sounds like heaven. My kind of dream. Yeah,
it was absolute heaven. I think when it comes to biscuits, my favourite, and this is sort of pinning myself down here, is probably like if you were like, here is a biscuit and it's like gonna just make you it's gonna make your day type of favourite. Those weird chocolate ones, the round ones that you get in the selection boxes from M&S, that are like mostly solid chocolate with biscuit in the middle.
Yeah, I know.
And they're about the size of my hand. They're huge. Yeah. And I love them. I think they're hilarious. I like how intricately shaped they are. I like that they masquerade as a biscuit.
They're a flower, aren't they? They're like a flower. I know exactly the ones you mean. Yeah.
And the thing is, they can either be more flower shaped or more wheel shaped. Yes. But what doesn't change is the fact there's about a centimetre of chocolate on either side. And then just some biscuit has been thrown in there so that they merit inclusion in the box.
Yeah,
but as a kid, you're like, I want those.
They're close. They're definitely not so much biscuit, are they? Jaffa Cakes made it into our house again the other day. I had Percy Pigs, but the Jaffa Cakes were gone in a day again, in one sitting, not by me.
Oh god!
But that reminds me, my local bakery sells versions of a couple of biscuits at like maxed up size, so you can get like a palm sized custard cream.
Oh my god,
I've forgotten that until just then. So we need some of those for a pod recording, don't we? Like full on palm sized custard cream. That's like a small meal, isn't it?
No, do you know what we need to do? Is we need to record virtually again, so we can't see. This is crucial. And I think we need to play the equivalent of biscuit battleships or similar. I think we need to see if we have the same types of biscuit in the house. I think that's a Christmas episode waiting to happen.
Yes.
Folks, if you'd like us to do that, do let us know, because we've got time to plan. I think that would be very funny.
And members of the Biscuit Tin could join a special Christmas biscuit quiz, couldn't they?
Oh my god, yes, we have to do a special. Do you know what I think we should do actually? Is regardless, we should do a year-end sewing quiz as our Christmas special. But I'll have questions for you, and you can have questions for me. Or like we can do it so someone else sets us. Maybe we can get Yvette on. I feel like Yvette would be a good quiz master.
Yeah, she'd be. She can be Ross, and we can be the two teams in French.
Exactly. Now this has been fun. Shall we talk about sewing?
Shall we? I think that'd be a good idea. And I've got a juicy dilemma for the end today as well.
We do. Now today's topic is one that is close to my heart because I'm almost perpetually annoyed about it. As Sam mentioned earlier, the title of today's episode is Help, Do I Have to Wear My Toile? Or similar. I would argue no. or yes, or whatever you want to do. But really, the crux of today is this idea that obviously sewing is a hobby and it is a skill that you learn, but also sewing is a means of making clothes. So there is an argument for slow sewing and reducing production and consumption.
But also it might be about creating your entire wardrobe.
Exactly. And it might be a means to make clothes, and it might be a means to learn. It might be both. And I think there is a significant body of people who, rightly or wrongly, put a huge emphasis on slow sewing, not consuming, really making the most of every stitch. And that's fine if you want to do that. I would argue, though, with my... do you know what it is? My normal opinion. I would argue that sewing is a hobby. Slow sewing, I think, puts so much pressure on the garment you're making, particularly if you've never made it before, for it to be worth that time and effort. And to be worth, and for you to love it at the end, and for you to be like, oh, great, a piece I can add to my wardrobe and have for years. Hands up who still has something they sewed in the first 6 months of sewing that's wearable.
Yeah, I do.
This is the thing. Very few people do, because it's a learning curve. You're learning, it's a skill. You don't necessarily know what you're doing. And I would argue if you know exactly what you're doing and how to do it, and you're very competent, and that's your reason for sewing is to mindfully create new clothes, brilliant, crack on. Do I think it's fair to tell beginners, oh, but you must consume slowly and you must unpick your garments and make them again and you must do this, you must do that? Do I think that's fair? No, I don't.
No, I mean, I get my knickers in a bunch personally about this, not about other people, but for myself, because it follows on from what we was talking about the other time about like some companies doing these fabric haul drops now, and that sense of gotta buy, and then it's gotta sew because I've got so much, and then it's and then if you're trying to create your whole wardrobe, then there's that sense of wanting to sew for the season you're in, to wear the things, and then I want to slow down and I want to enjoy it, but then I want to wear it, and then it's, for me, I'm in my constant, not in a bad way, but I'm in a constant discussion with myself about trying to be both versions, because I do want to have a wardrobe that I want to wear, and maybe some people are at a different stage in that, but I'm still trying to craft the wardrobe I want to wear, and I don't want to go and buy it, I want to sew it, and that's a personal choice. So I've already made it slightly harder. And then I also don't want to be a fast fashion sewer, so then I put that agenda on myself. But then I want it to be a hobby, because it definitely helps my mental health and my creativity, and I really love what it does to my creativity. But then when I get creative and I go off on a tangent and do something amazing, then I get all my head into a brilliant thing, and I love that. But then I have to stop and do my full-time job and actually spend time with other people.
It's so frustrating when work gets in the way of just sewing time, isn't it?
Yes, and then I want to be able to sit and enjoy some hand sewing, but I can't fit it. It's just whoa, and that's all from my hobby, but it doesn't make me sad or upset. So, dear listener, please don't worry about me.
Yes,
but this is genuinely the thoughts. But this is genuinely the thoughts of how my brain takes me all over the place with this.
But I think that's representative, though. I think that's representative of a lot of people, and I think where I struggle is where sometimes there is this, I saw a reel today that I told Sam, and I'm going to describe how it made me feel differently, because she'll have to beat me out otherwise. It frustrated me somewhat. I think that's
yes, allowed. You were extremely frustrated.
I was. I was, and actually,
high levels of frustration were experienced at the viewing of this reel, dear listener.
They were, and I was scrolling, and you know what, folks? I swore out loud. I wasn't even talking at the time. I went, are you effing kidding me? Out loud, and Adam was like, you're right. I was like, yeah, no worries. Crack on, back to work. Ignore me, I'm not doing anything. And the reel was someone saying, cardinal ultimate sins of sewing, biggest mistakes every sewist makes. And in the comments they were like, basically they were smugly twirling around, and I don't mind saying they were really smug because they've got like hundreds of thousands of followers and they're clearly happy doing that, but they were so smugly twirling around in their cottagecore dress, and their caption was about 500 words, and it said basically, any sewist who doesn't make a toile is wasting their time. Embrace every stitch. You must do this. You must do that. And I read it and I was like, oh, go away. Like, it's totally fine to not make a toile. Yeah. It is totally fine to make a toile. It's also totally fine, as I've done with my wedding dress, to stick a half-hour timer on and make the worst, like, dirtiest toile possible just to check it fits. That's also fine. If you're worried, like I've twirled just the bodice before, just a sleeve or whatever. But where it all starts to break down for me is where you start making people feel like they should be sewing a certain way, and that's not the way they actually want to enjoy their hobby.
But I think from talking to Mary, sometimes it's not even what other people are saying, it's inbuilt programming in people's heads as well. Because if you've been taught to sew traditionally or whatever as well, there's that perception. But I think sometimes it goes even further, and it's this capitalist idea, and I'm sorry, but I can't be not political about that. It's this capitalist idea that we have to turn every hobby into a hustle. Even if that hustle is a hustle of our hobby being our clothes are of a standard where someone could inspect them, Esme from Sewing Bee can inspect them and be extremely satisfied. and I had to catch myself about 5 years ago, because I've had a lot of creative hobbies through my life, and quite a few of those have ended up becoming ways to make money, because when I was a student and things, actually creating and selling jewellery was a way to help fund things. But what we end up doing is, and I did this with painting, I ended up making myself feel bad because if my paintings weren't good enough to hang on the wall, I felt I'd wasted my time.
Exactly.
And I had to have a massive word with myself.
A problem.
Yeah. And I had a huge word with myself, and then stopped all of that. And it took a bit. I read something somewhere about it, and then realised that actually it didn't matter if I painted 10 paintings of birds and none of them were wall worthy, because actually the pleasure was in the painting and the feeling the paint moving on the canvas, and no one needs to ever see them, and it doesn't matter.
So this is the thing, and I think that also blends really well with what you just said about having our clothes inspected. I frequently have this conversation in my DMs. People go, oh, well, the insides aren't as nice as the outsides. And I always have to go, is someone looking at the inside of your clothes? Is it
who's looking inside?
And there's a difference between, I'm not happy with the finish of that seam, so I'm going to do it again, versus that seam doesn't look like everybody else's. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to throw it out there. I've made adjustments before, and people go, oh, like I've taken bits out the waist. People go, oh, did you unpick it? And I'm like, no, I just cut 2 centimetres. Like I just sewed it 2 centimetres further in and cut it out. Because who gives a flip? Like, oh, you proud of me? I'm trying so hard not to swear. It's on socials.
Extremely well.
Do you know what? It's going to go in a minute because I am very passionate about this. But it is. It frustrates me because people aren't inspecting your clothes. You shouldn't feel like they are. Even if you post them on Instagram, unless you have an exceptional camera, none of us can see your seams unless you choose to show us to them. And the thing is, there's nothing either to be you can be proud of your seams, and you should be. You should be proud of everything you sew, or you should be proud that you got to your machine and took time for yourself, which on that day looked like sewing. But when we get to the point either where we're over consuming by sewing for the algorithm or to catch up, which is a problem in itself, or we flip the other way and go, oh, I can't make too much this month because people will think I'm over consuming. I feel like,
and I've got to that point sometimes, because sometimes people have said to me, well, you're a fast sewer, and then I'm like, oh no, I'm saying too much.
And the reality is, for example, I make a lot of the same pattern over and over again.
I love it, yeah.
And sometimes that's because, for example, great example is the chalk and notch fringe dress. Looks great on me, really like sewing it, can sew it in my sleep. I've made 3, wear them all the time.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the thing is,
I don't need to keep finding new patterns. If I've got like the Tammy Handmade Naya, I think I'm on 6 now, but woven and jersey, and no, I'm probably on about 7, and dress versions. Why do I need to sew a different one? As you say, I can sew it with my eyes closed. I can have a win when I'm having a poo day elsewhere in my life. I can sit down and I can make a Naya and I can have a win. That's what I need.
Exactly. And also, frankly, you can't have too many t-shirts. You can't have too many things like that.
I'm going to test that point. I'm going to test it.
Actually, I am worried about how many t-shirts you specifically have, but
But I really enjoyed the other day shopping my stash of leftover bits of jersey and wovens that were left from other projects, and realising actually I've got enough to get a Naya out of this, and being able to enjoy that fabric in another way. It was really, I had a lovely time, and actually it fed my creativeness, and I think that's the thing, is it's okay if you make 37 toiles on something, if that feeds your creativeness, and you're making something you've never made before, and it takes you 37 toiles and you have a lovely time along the way, then that's brilliant. Because I think we need to embrace the creative aspect, I think, of sewing, rather than just the process.
But I think more than anything, we need to recognise that people have different motivations for sewing. You are not ecologically unsound for sewing the way you want to sew. If you are buying hundreds and hundreds of meters of fabric and not doing anything with them and just lying around doing fabric angels and then throwing them away into the general waste, then potentially there's a sustainability issue at play.
Yes.
But,
I'd like to join in the fabric angels first. Yeah. But...
try it at Christmas, it'll be right. Yeah. But I think what's really interesting is what you said just now as well. You are a quick sewist and it feeds your creativity. You like it. I am never going to be the type of person who will spend 20 minutes doing one seam, ever. You've seen me sew. I'm not inaccurate. I am just
Definitely
quite
not.
fast.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I will crack on and I will do things. And I occasionally get messages where people go, how did you sew that so quickly? I sewed it at this speed. We all sew differently, and that's the whole point. You can sew for slow sewing and have a wonderful time. You can go to a social and sew one seam because you're chatting to everyone. Also fair enough. You can do what I do, which I think of sometimes as power sewing, where I sit down and I just smash it out. I have like 3 rom-coms queued up, one after the other. I have tea, I have wine, got my headphones on, 1 sock. I'm having a great time because I am going to give myself this time to just give it a go.
Yeah, I love those days like that. Yeah.
And for me, that's magical rather than it's more magical than forcing myself to sew slowly, because that's what it would be. There are people who take a joy in that slow sewing, and that's beautiful as well. But for me, it would be forcing myself to do something I can't do.
And I've decided that actually I want to have some slow sewing because that's what I want to try, and I want to try it because I want to try it, not because anyone thinks I should, but because I want
to do anything.
Yeah. And I think actually we because of the capitalist society we live in, we are constantly pitched against each other, and it's from the day and I think genderising it, but it is quite different between men and women.
Of course it is. Women will always find a way to there is always a way to put women down.
Yeah, always. And so pitching us against each other is such an effective thing, because it means we're pitched against each other, so we're not paying attention to other things. And I think, seeing each other as competition is something to really watch ourselves for, because we're not doing it on purpose. It's the way all of society for a long time, and it is a lot better now, but was programmed how us to feel. And I think that it's catching ourselves in that programming of feeling we need something because it's the season and we need something fresh, and that again is capitalism making us feel like that's what we need.
Yeah, that's true.
And also
that's why trends move so quickly, so they can sell more.
Because it's make more money, and that does happen in the sewing world accidentally, and then most of this is all accidental from all of our perspectives, marketing wise and big business wise. It's very, very intentional. But I think that we then end up having comparison, and comparison is the thief of joy. And I think we've got to catch ourselves when we're doing it as well. So there's a lot of like conscious catching to do to make sure that.
But also, I think there's something slightly different, but it feeds into the same thing. You have to catch yourself trying not to be in competition with other people. But there is another thing that we all really like to do. Everybody does it, particularly if you like a hobby or you like a sport or you like something. If someone else does it, but they do it differently to you, the common
it's the human condition, isn't it?
Is to go, but I don't do it like that. Therefore, you should do it like I do it. And you go, no, it's creative. If we were all scuba diving and someone was like, I tried to turn my air tanks on halfway, then you can say, that's super dangerous and you might die. Have you considered not doing that? I mean, it's still their right to do it, but it makes more sense to go, have you tried not doing that? Whereas when I, for example, to give a very specific example of something that happened last year and I'm not annoyed about, but is a good example, is when I messaged going, I posted something on my story and it had raw seams because, frankly, it was a busy one and my overlocker was broken. So I was like, yeah, I'll come back to it. And someone messaged me and was like, I don't understand. You're so brave. I don't understand how anyone can leave their seams unfinished. And I was like, well, sweetheart,
take a look at my wardrobe then.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you're right. I am both brave, noble, and I can't be bothered to get my overlocker fixed.
I literally wore 2 tops last week to work where I hadn't even done the hem, so I had to make sure I tucked them in because I was so desperate to wear them.
Well, my Sew Over It's Anthony skirt. My mum was like, oh, you haven't hemmed it. Is that you're going to do that like nice denim raw hem thing? And I was like, yes, that's what I'm going to do. Which I am now going to do because I think it's a good idea.
I've taken a vow to always carry scissors now because I often am so excited to wear something. I haven't done the snip check.
But I think that's lovely as well because that shows you're so excited about what you make.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the part of the reason for me slow sewing wouldn't work is unless I can do slow sewing where there's multitudes of versions, but I can't do that thing where it's like you spend 3 months on one garment. That's why I'll never, apart from the fact I'm not coordinated enough to knit, it's also why I'll never be able to knit. I like to see something come together quickly and I like to be able to work on it like that. But I also feel it really stifles my creativity having to wait. Because sometimes an idea will have sometimes an idea will have lain dormant in my head for like 6 months. So, for example, the chalk and knot Shay, which you guys will have seen by now, and I collaborated with Tamlin. It was really good fun. I've been thinking about making the Shay since it came out. But I didn't get it originally because I was like, what kind of Shay am I going to make? What am I going to do?
Oh, I love that pondering and that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is sometimes people have accused me in the past of fast sewing, and I'm like, but again, it's an iceberg, isn't it? The bit you're seeing is me finally diving in and making it.
Yeah,
you're not seeing the 3 months of me going, oh, I could do it like this, or maybe I could do that. Do I want this fabric? Because the thing is, I don't buy fabric very often. And when I'm buying for a project, it takes me 2 or 3 weeks to really decide where I'm like, right, this is a new pattern I've not made. What do I need? How do I want it to look? What am I concerned about? What types of, I think we should do an episode on this at some point, which is choosing fabric for patterns. So, as in knowing what structure goes with what.
Yeah.
How it's going to work out where. Because I spend a lot of time doing that. And I think that's something people would count as slow sewing. But I don't really talk about it because it's just ticking along. And then one day it's like an egg timer goes off. I go ding and I go, right, I'm going to buy that. I'm going to do this and we'll crack it out in a weekend. It'll be fine.
The bread is baked. It's time to get it out of the oven.
But I think
because I do a similar thing. I have quite a big stash of fabric, which you've seen. But also I have a lot of ribbons, buttons, all sorts of things. And I love that. Getting the whole box out, laying all the things on, all that, that choosing, which again, people don't see, but that will have happened for weeks sometimes with something, or as you say, in my head, because by now, when this comes out, I should have finished the many iterations of the quilted jackets I've been making.
It's so many, I love it.
It's like, I mean, we're up to like 7 now.
You are up to 7. And I will admit, there is a chance, possibly that's too many quilted jackets. But also, if you're very happy with them, then it's fine, you know.
But do you know what? The joy I had in searching charity shops for months to find quilts that I could use either as the jacket or as the wadding. And that's been going on for years. Because trying to find a quilt in a charity shop, that's like, you know, you're looking for unicorns there.
Oh, yeah.
Because nowadays they're not easy to find because all the big vintage people buy them up because they make jackets for £300 and sell them, you know. And then also the choosing which patterns, because obviously there's a lot of quilted jacket patterns out there, and I wanted to balance some free ones versus some like easy to buy ones, and then I wanted to wear some of them.
Which I think is really important. I don't think enough people wait to recommend patterns. Like, I'd rather have a recommendation for someone who's worn it for 3 months than someone who's made it and worn it once. Yeah,
and I wanted to do like a range of like set-in sleeve, raglan sleeve, drop shoulder. That whole joy I've had in like looking and browsing, and I've even hand stitched bias binding on the inside of some of them, and I think that there was no rules to this because this is just a thing I'm doing, and when I release the vlog people will find it useful because at some point someone said to me, oh, it'd be really useful to know about what patterns you use, and they set like a germ then that went off in my head. But yeah, I've managed to find the Great British Sewing Bee from whatever season that was, the quilted jacket. It was on a website. I found the pattern. So as I say, I'm up to about 7, and
I'm having a moment now. I think I might have the quilted jacket pattern from the Sewing Bee.
No. Well, I found it
possibly now. Do you know what? That's really bad because I knew you were looking for it, and it's not till right now looking down at my patterns that I'm like, I think I have it. Sorry.
My problem now
I
is
have
stopping
3 of the
myself.
books. So if you ever want to look at the books while you're here and trace off anything, you're welcome.
I've only found the pattern, so if I get stuck and I need the instructions, I'll be going to you.
I'll have a look after we record. Sorry. Terrible podcast partly. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the thing is people will see them and go, whoa, how do you have time to sew 7 quilted jackets? But the thing is, I have been working on it for a long time, and I've had it's fed my creativity, and my brain, as you know, is always looking at patterns going, can I sew that out of jersey?
Well, also, but let it be known though, you have bought quilts.
Yes.
So some of them you've quilted yourself, right?
Yeah.
And some of them you've bought pre-quilted material. So just in case anyone thinks Sam is some kind of speed night quilter, like, but I think that's beautiful as well in itself. And like, you really have, the thing is, folks, I obviously see Sam a lot. And almost every time I see you, you're wearing a different quilted jacket, which I love.
I have really now to justify having 7.
Yeah, you've got to label them. You've got to do Monday, Tuesday, like socks when you're a kid. And then you can have your Wednesday quilted jacket.
Yeah. Well, I've decided I might gift one or give one away because I'm just not sure a person needs that many. You're thinking which one you want now, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Yeah. I can't believe my other half hasn't processed yet that there are 7 quilted jackets in the house.
But men don't see different patterns of quilted. He'll just see quilted jacket.
He does.
And then
he is on it with my coats.
Really?
It is, yes. I was at one point banned from buying any more coats.
Oh my god. Adam is on my knitwear collection for the same reason.
Because I think because I wear bright colours, if you don't have the right coloured coat to complement the outfit.
Oh yeah, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, and we don't have like a big place to hang coats. We live rented, and the people who owned this house were very tall. I have to stand on the staircase to reach the hook to hang the coats up.
They are, folks, again, as another short person, they are oddly tall.
Yes, they are very,
If you're like 6'2", you'd be fine, but otherwise you're sort of reaching.
I mean, I'm literally leaping up to hang things up. So of course they don't always hang up because it's like
you just. And then what you're actually doing is a coat version of darts, and you're just throwing your coats at the wall.
But of course, that when you've got a thicker coat, you can only fit so many of those on a hook, and I've only got 2 hooks. So then I realised there was a hook in the downstairs loo, and then the day when like the coats were poking out too much, that it was hard to use the loo. That was a discussion.
I love it.
So now I have to swap my coats seasonally now and put the ones away in the loft now.
See, I think I get away a little bit with being very Scottish with this, and I have a black coat, which when I find a coat pattern, I'm still slightly scarred from the one I made.
Oh yeah. No, what was it called? Nova?
No, the Atelier Jupe Alex coat.
Yeah.
Which is not drafted for my body, and I think is actually, I was going to save it, but I honestly think it's too much effort, so I'm going to make a different coat pattern. But I want like a long black duster coat, because I used to have one, and it was from French Connection, and I had it for so long. I had it for a decade, and I had it for so long that I wore through the pockets on the inside and the lining. Yeah. So the lining was ragged on the inside, and I couldn't use the pocket. I loved it, so I'm going to make a black duster coat. Then I have a shorter black sort of military coat. Or is it a belt? No, it's belted actually. I have a trench coat, which goes, I didn't make it, but it goes with everything. So I love it. And then I have like my proper, it's -1 coats. But I don't actually have any others. I have some jackets, but I'm the kind of person, lots of you will know this, where if there isn't a coat that goes with my outfit, I will decide I'm not cold. And I will just go out. And I'm like, I'm fine.
I'm Southern, so that doesn't happen.
Yeah, you are Southern.
Southern stuff yeah.
No, Sam is a normal human being with a normal sense of temperature. I am. The problem is, I still remember my 18th birthday, because I'm born in, well, we're both January, and I remember going out in Dundee in January, and I didn't have a coat, because I was like, I'm not checking it in there. I'll never see it again. Like Dundee nightclub cloakrooms, absolutely not. And I remember just being like, I am not cold. I am not cold. So I
didn't always have this many coats. When I was younger, I wasn't so coat orientated.
But let me just say, though, your collection of coats, I think, speaks to someone who is incredibly creative with the way they dress. Because I think if you're going to have like 12 coats, I'm just estimating here, I don't know how many coats you have.
I'm not counting, because then I'd have to admit. So
yeah, well,
more than 12.
We're not the coat accountability session here. That's a different episode. But if someone has that many coats and they're all different and serve different functions, crack on. I see total sense to that.
And like everything else, if I don't wear it, it goes. You know,
exactly. But if you have 12 black coats, there is no point. I'm sorry, there just isn't.
I think it mostly happened when I became like more senior teacher, because I spent a lot of time outside at the school gate, before and after school. So my coat became an integral part of my outfit, because you could be stood there sometimes for 30-40 minutes, and that's the only part of your outfit that was seen. And as you say, because I'm creative, I wanted it to work. And of course then you fall down a hole, don't you? You know. But I do limit. I'm a bit like, I've got a selection now, but as I say, I could get I could get my knickers in a twist about making 7 quilted jackets, but actually this is like a version of making a toile, because actually I'm toiling different quilted jackets to find out which ones work for me, because actually having a raglan versus a setting versus an off the shoulder in a quilted fabric is very different the way it sits on you, and with someone with a small back like I have, it can really affect it, particularly raglan. That's really tricky to adjust as well.
And then what I have to say about this, and this is where it all gets a little bit hypocritical and self-eating, and I don't like it. There are people who would say what you've done is slow sewing because you've toiled something 7 times to find what you'd like. There are also people who would say it's not slow sewing because you've consumed too much while making it. And that is where I think it becomes a problem, because the reality is we are all sewing because we like sewing.
Yes. And luckily no one can see the fingers I would put up to people if they tried to tell me about that.
But this is the thing. Also, I have to say, though, and it really hacks me off, these people who act like everything we make is going to be great. I'm sorry. No, because the one single inalienable downside of sewing is you can't try it on before.
Yeah.
If it's a new pattern, you can't try it on. And I know that's what a toile is for.
And you just don't know if that style's going to work. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing, because even if you toile it, that's still effort, that's still time. And I think there's also people who act like, oh, it's fine, it's only a toile. And it's like, yeah, but for that person, they may not, like, they may have had a whole vision of how it was going to work out. And they still feel rubbish.
Is so precious. Yeah. And if your time is like mine, precious, because you're squeezing it in around everything else, then it can be really annoying sometimes if you've done all of that and they're like...
Oh, well,
that's why I sometimes go and do try-ons in shops, because then I can see what styles suit me.
I try stuff on, I take loads of photos, and then I go, that looks terrible, this looks great, this could look nice, and sort of work through it like that. Yeah. But I am working on a follow-up paper at the moment, and I'm going to call it, because time is a weirdly big part of my research, like a really big part, and there is no such thing as free time. There isn't. Yeah. Because free time is one of those weird luxuries. Actually, all time is you deciding to do something instead of deciding to do something else.
And also, I agree that if you're choosing to do nothing, it's a conscious decision, and you don't have to earn it. You can just choose to do it.
Exactly, and you can. However, if you're choosing to sew and you spend 6 hours sewing, whether it's toile or a finished garment, and it looks crap, you don't feel good. And I don't think you should have to pretend to feel fine because you don't want to be seen as not slow. Like, it's fine. I did a blog post about this years ago.
It's the sewing version of toxic positivity, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
If you've spent 3 months sewing something and it looks awful on you, you're going to be upset about it. There is no point pretending you aren't. And if you don't pretend and you tell us all and you go, do you know what, guys? This is just absolutely fucking awful. Sorry. Like, this has gone so badly wrong. We will all go, we are with you.
Yeah.
You don't have to turn it into something else. You don't have to make it again better either. No, you can just go, this is going in the bin.
Yeah. I agree. Sit with that emotion, chuck it on the floor, have a grump, move on when you're ready to move on. Because
but moving on doesn't have to mean making it better. And this is the big thing. No. You can just go, oh, that pattern's not for me. I'm not even going to try and make that better. I'm going to go something I like sewing. That's also fine.
I agree, and I think it because of this whole like making everything a side hustle. And although I think Me Made May is brilliant, because I think it's because I've got it that it's brilliant for me. So I like some weeks I didn't post any pictures because I didn't want to and I didn't need to. But the second I see it, and I know we've talked about this already, but people going, "Oh, I failed at Me Made." You've only failed at Me Made May if you've not got what you wanted out of it.
Yeah, Me Made May is not a photo challenge.
No, and it's not a wear Me Made every day. Yeah,
no,
I mean, otherwise, that's so opposite of what she wanted. She doesn't want it to be about having to sew so much you can wear it every day.
Well, and this is the thing. Now, I have to say, as somebody who has worn Me Made every day in May, because, and this is another thing I'm going to get round to, just because you sew quickly doesn't mean that you are everything you wear, you sew, you wear. But also, and it will drive me to distraction, it depends on the size of your existing wardrobe as to whether that is a problem or not. For me, I have, and you've seen my wardrobe? I feel like you've seen my wardrobe.
I feel like I have, yeah.
Yeah, and I organise by colour. And I have a very significant changeover seasonally. Because that is how I wear my clothes. I wear totally different stuff in the summer to what I wear in the winter. And that's fine. Some garments cross over. Like right now I'm wearing a Size Me Sewing Florence boxy tee and it's in bamboo jersey and I adore it. And I'm going to make like 3 more. And I've been wearing this today after my run because it felt nice. But I could wear this 2 weeks out of 4 for May. I could wear the same dress every day. That would still count as Me Made May. You don't have to wear something different every day because it depends what you've promised yourself. But there is no shame in outfit repeating. There's also no shame in having a different outfit for every day if that's how you wear your clothes. Where we sort of run into the weeds of this problem is if you have mountains of Me Made clothes and you only wear 4 of them on repeat.
Yes.
Then maybe you need to think about how you're sewing in relation to what you wear. But then
because if nothing else, you're wasting your money possibly.
Well, exactly. But then again, if sewing for you is not a way of making clothes, but is a way of learning and relaxing, then it might be fine. If you're finding ways to repurpose or whatever, you might. Yeah. I know people who cut toiles out of old garments who go, oh, I just sewed that to learn how to do this skill. Because we don't have a go at people in pottery classes for wasting clay.
No.
When they're learning to do something. And we don't have a go at knitters for wasting wool if they unravel something or whatever. Like, we're not this critical of other crafts. But because sewing crosses over, well, it's really interesting, but because sewing crosses over as a hobby, but also a means of production.
And because it used to be that as well for people.
Exactly.
I think there's that historical genetic legacy of, I think World War II, of the, not
make,
being
do,
wasteful.
and mend, and exactly. Yeah. But because they intersect in a way that a lot of other crafts don't, in the same way, and like in such recent history, we're a lot harder on ourselves, and there has to be a reality where if you were learning to sew at school, you didn't keep everything you made because half of it was crap, and there was an understanding of that as well.
Yeah, I think we're some of us are only 1 or 2 generations away from the make, do and mend generation, and you would just patch because there wasn't a choice, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't patch now. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that sewing was very much part of the household chores and production as opposed to a hobby.
But it's really interesting, and I have to point this out because it does irritate me. Everyone acts like the make, do and mend generation wanted to make, do and mend, and they did not.
They didn't.
My grandma, for example, refuses to mend things because she had to growing up. So for her, it was a real thing to move away from having to darn socks.
Yeah.
She was like, I'm not doing that. That is a sign of me. And I think we do have to stop. It's like that weird Kath Kidson nostalgia that happened about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago. Oh, it's been a while. But that whole keep calm and carry on, keep eating biscuits and carry on.
Yeah, that glamorising's a very difficult time. Yeah,
exactly. And it's this thing where we go, oh, well, that generation didn't mind doing. Of course they minded. No one likes mending socks. Mending is the most dull thing in the world, and you can dress it up and make it cottagecore and make it Instagram friendly, but no one in their right mind enjoys mending 50 socks. Some people might enjoy mending 1 sock because it's this fun, gentrified thing. You're like, oh, actually, I get to go back and mend my socks. And if you enjoy it, that's fine. But we cannot pretend there is anything glamorous or like it was a chore, like doing the ironing was a chore.
Yeah.
It was not, exactly. Oh my God, guys, do you want to bring your mending over and we can sit and mend together and just, in our air raid shelter? That's not how that worked.
No.
And it drives, I'm sorry, I am ranting about this, but it drives me mad because it did used to be a household chore. Clothing, sewing was a means of production. But it is now also a hobby, and it is fine to be a little bit rubbish at your hobby because it's a hobby. You don't have to make beautiful things. Esme is not going to come round to your house and look at your seam finishes, and if she does, you're allowed to not let her in. She's not a vampire. You can just go, no, not today. But we have to recognise that there is something inherently gentrified as well about going, actually, I mend my socks, and you're like, okay, because now does that make you better than anyone else? No, it doesn't.
Because being time rich is the luxury now.
Exactly. If you have time to mend your socks, and I'll say it because I know this is unpopular, and I know there are arguments for and against. In terms of, for example, eco-friendly fashion is a lot more expensive, and I know there are very good reasons for that, and I know that we are too used to paying for clothes cheaply. But when it comes down to things like inclusion, 150 quid for a dress is still far too much of a physical capital outlay.
Yes, in one go. People. Yes.
And the thing is, they might save them twice that. But
in the long run, but not everyone's got that luxury.
Exactly. It is a privilege to be able to do that. In the same way, it's a privilege to be able to buy all 100% linen, cotton, Liberties fabrics to make your wardrobe out of. That's not cheap.
Yeah, and also it's a luxury to have time to get the equipment, to sit down, to mend the things. And lovely and really nice to be able to do it, but it is a luxury. And I think I would say the one takeaway I would give people, because I'm aware we've got a very good dilemma today, is if you're finding that you're putting onto yourself any self-imposed rules or self-imposed expectations that are damaging your enjoyment of your hobby, then that's the place to start, is how you're going to work through those. I would say working to bring play into your sewing will benefit you, whether that play is through trying new patterns or combining things or sewing 7 quilted jackets, whatever, or like Jess, planning a project for 3 months till the bread is ping time to make it. But that play is so important, the research around that for us. And I, the amount of sewists I bet sat out there thinking right now, but I'm not creative. Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
And everyone is creative in their own way. And if you combine 2 things together and go, whoop, that didn't work, whoopsie, put it in the scrap thing or whatever, it's okay. It doesn't matter. Well, you had fun. You tried something out.
Learning is a process of failing until you accidentally succeed. The failure is the much more important part of learning. Because that's where you go, oof, that didn't work.
And that's I always laugh someone said to me I was brave because I tried this closet core pattern back in May that was really outside my comfort zone. But if I hadn't tried it, I wouldn't have known. It might have been the most amazing thing ever, and I loved trying it.
Exactly. But it's like I'm gonna follow up on that for closing thoughts with 2 things. Firstly, for those of you who don't know, my PhD, I look at sort of transformation and leisure and inclusion and stuff. But a big bit of what I look at is serious leisure, and sewing can be counted as serious leisure. It's where you can develop a skill, and it's a hobby that requires like time investment and money investment, and it's something you can progress through and you get better and you accumulate community and skill and all that kind of stuff. There is a learning curve to sewing. So if you're up at the super experienced sewing end, you don't have to put as much effort potentially into certain techniques, and that might mean you can slow sew, and that's beautiful, and I wish you luck. I don't want to sound like I'm against slow sewing, but I'm against enforced slow sewing, and I'm also against making it look like the norm, because it's not. I'm
actually going to take a month to do some, actually, but that's through choice, not because anyone telling me to.
You're doing that, as you say, A, for your choice, but you're also not looking down at anyone else and going, my way of sewing is better. Now, whether you churn out a garment every 2 days or a garment every 3 months, you're both sewists. Please crack on accordingly. It is appalling to me to judge anyone else and how they do the hobby based on how you do it, because you just don't know.
And I think sometimes people don't realise they are judging in the way they comment. I think being mindful of thinking that we're being helpful in our comments when actually we're actually ending up putting more pressure on people and causing people, you might, for all you know, you're reinforcing someone's self-imposed rule that they've been fighting to break out from.
Exactly.
Be aware of that.
The golden rule should always be, as Sam has said, you should be enjoying your hobby.
Yeah.
And also,
let's big up other people. Just big them up. That's all they need.
Big up other people. and if you are going to comment, please do so having had a nice little discussion with yourself and having maybe deconstructed your own circumstances.
Yes.
Maybe you're lucky enough to not have to work full time because you're financially secure, or however that's happened, and you have supposedly free time to devote to your sewing. Maybe you get to sew once every 3 weeks because your kids are at that age and you literally cannot leave them alone without them walking into a fridge. Like, that is also fine. But if you start from either of those positions, looking at other people on social media going, how do they sew so much? Why are they sewing so much? Have a little think and remember, we're all different. We're all coming from different places. We all sew different ways. But at the end of the day, we're all sewists and we're all having a nice time. And we should be having a nice time. If you see someone who is clearly putting too much pressure on themselves, there's a lovely, I know you have the same thing. There's a lovely lady who messages me and goes, you're right. And I go, yeah, I'm fine. Or no, actually I'm not, I suppose. I'm probably doing a bit too much. But I would encourage you not to comment things like, oh my God, you're so brave for doing this. And I don't know how you can do this, because it's loaded.
Yeah.
If you've genuinely got a question, ask it. But
before I comment things like that, I always ask myself, is this about me?
Yes.
Or, because most of the time, if I've got an opinion like that, it's probably because it's more about me. You know?
Any comment for me or a message that starts with the words, I could never, I always sit down and go, well, it's a good job I can then, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like, so earlier today, I was having a conversation because I got an annoying comment. And I don't normally rise to it, but it annoyed me and I felt it was worth sharing. But one of my fabulous fellow vloggers messaged me and she was like, someone messaged me, if it makes you feel better, and said, I don't know why you've tattooed yourself, it's ruined your skin. And I was like, please tell me you told them it's a good job you're not tattooing them, because that's what I told. I have a tattoo along my shoulder. Sam and I both have tattoos, actually. And do you know, Sam, actually, I want to know if this happened to you. Would you like to guess the fourth thing that was said to me when I first got my tattoo? So the first three were like family going, oh, that looks nice. And, would you like to know the fourth thing that a sort of...
Was it something about getting old?
No.
No?
So for reference, folks, my tattoo is a straight line. It runs, like, obviously it's not a straight line, but it runs in a straight line from my spine to my shoulder. And it looks from a distance like a line. And this person, who shall remain nameless, good, today's going well, said to me, but what about your wedding day? And I was like, it'll still be there.
Yes.
Thoughts? Like, what? I don't know. I don't even know what that question is, but that says so much more about them. I couldn't have even
thought that someone would say that, because I would never have thought it,
But the thing is, like, I got this on my 18th birthday. It was paid for by my parents, who, when I was 17, were like, if you still want it in a year, you can have it as your main 18th present. And I was like, brilliant. Wrote it accordingly, wrote down what I wanted, kept revisiting, still wanted it, got it. But the fact that there are people out there who will throw their own opinions and insecurities at you can be really challenging on social media, particularly if you're already feeling a bit off about what you're doing, or you're not enjoying your hobby the way you want to. So, when you're commenting, think about...
I've thought about that, and I've realised, because I was a head teacher, I was so used to people having opinions about me, I kind of learned to be like, yeah, whatever. But it is hard if you're not used to it. My favourite one, because I've got 3 tattoos. I've got the big one that goes elbow all the way across my back, which is probably about 3, and then I've got one on my thigh and one on my calf. And after I got the first one, my mum said to me, don't go crazy and have any more, don't go crazy. That's what she said. But bearing in mind, I didn't have any of my tattoos till I was in my 40s.
Oh my God, what?
I didn't want them before. Yeah. So it wasn't because I didn't want them before. It just took me... a bit like your bread idea of breaking in your head. It took me ages to work out exactly what I wanted, and the amount of time I spent thinking about it and drawing it and designing it.
I think more people should do that with tattoos, though, because it's too easy to get something when you're 18 and go, oh, that was a terrible idea. But it is really interesting to me, though, the way we police each other through our own insecurities. It is really interesting, because you may not realise you're doing it.
Yeah,
and I think
people need to
have a wee think about how we engage with the world around us and how it might be us.
Not in this podcast, but another day. Remind me to tell you about my idea about Clippy, which you might not remember. Clippy.
Do you mean the paperclip?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you remember Clippy? Okay. I'll tell you an idea I have. We'll save it for another podcast.
Oh my God, I want something similar to that just says, is this a terrible idea? I'm going to finish off with a final thought on this, because it's just relevant. And for anyone who's new to my account... And then we must
get to the dilemma.
We must. But I just feel like it's a really nice way of rounding it off. If you get comments that you don't like and are making you feel bad about your hobby, there are 2 approaches. As Sam has said, as a head teacher, she was very used to getting comments, and you do develop strategies. For me, as someone who's spent years in events and hospitality and environments where people just yell their opinions at you because they're annoyed at their own stuff, you can bottle it up and feel terrible about yourself. You can tell that person to get in the bin, which is also fine. Or one of my favourite strategies, and I did that today, is share it with the sewing community and just say, you don't have to name check the person, but you can say, can I get a sense check? Wisdom, use the same logic as your sewing machine. When something's wrong with your stitches on the underside, it's actually the top, and vice versa. If there's something wrong with the stitches on the top, it's actually being caused by the bottom. If you're upset by something someone's doing, it's probably something you feel uncomfortable with. So,
but I think, I always remember it's never about me when someone else says something. Well, sometimes think everything's about us, and actually very little is really about us. That's what I would say.
It's mostly about other people. Now, we have a brilliant dilemma to round off this
I'm going to be really strict here. So I want you thinking of your response here, because we're already long on time here. So it was a lovely comment from someone who's telling us how much they love the pod. So thank you very much for that. I don't know if I know their name. I will message them so that they know. So loved the pod, and then said, never seen an episode about this. So here we go. We've turned it into a dilemma. This is about pattern matching, but not matching patterns or matching like type of fabric. It's about when you've got a pattern on a fabric, and they say they struggle with how to know what style of clothing or pattern to put that fabric onto. So the example given was she had a gorgeous navy twill with lemons on it. I think we'll see a lot of that. It just gone with the So Fruity. So sewed it into a pair of fitted trousers. That's the key point there, fitted trousers. And when she put them on, felt she looked like she walked out of a circus. So since then, has been really apprehensive about how to select like the pattern on the fabric with what style of clothing to sew with it, and has asked for advice.
So that is a really interesting one, and I can first of all say to this person, you are not on your own. It is a weird part of sewing because you have basically endless options to do what you want to do, and sometimes for me it goes the other way around. I don't know about you, Sam, I find it very difficult when I've got a pattern I've not made before and I'm trying to choose a fabric. But sometimes I will see a fabric and go, oh my God, that would look amazing as this. Yeah. And I find it easier when I start with the fabric sometimes. And I find it more difficult when I'm sort of staring at a pattern, because sometimes the problem I've got is I'm looking at the examples on the pattern envelope and going, what else could I do? But I do think
that's when I spend a lot of time looking at Instagram at other people's.
Yeah,
because
me too. And
sometimes I just want to see what it looks like on a body a bit like mine, because not all the patterns have. Some pattern companies are really good at having a good representation, but not all are. And I think this, again, short girl problems, the amount of lemons to leg ratio versus a tall person is quite different.
Well, I think it also depends on what else you're wearing and what the rest of your wardrobe looks like, and what the chances of you being able to match it. So my chalk and knot Shay, I made in a sort of, oh my God, I broke my blue rule. You will have seen this, but I broke my blue rule because it's like a navy background with light blue flowers on it.
I'll get you a matron's hat to wear with it.
It does not look matronly, thank you.
Well,
by the time this comes out,
look matronly in blue. So.
No, I look matronly in navy, and actually, I really do. It's awful. It's awful. But this is light enough. It's got enough light blue on it that it feels like ditzy and summery.
Then.
No, thank God. Okay. Oh, guys, honestly, I really do. Plain navy. I don't know what I was thinking earlier in my sewing career.
So I'm going to be really strict here.
Yeah. So. I'm getting to a point.
Okay.
So the reason I brought up my Shay is because I wasn't sure with that pattern. It's got a lot of panels. It's got a lot of gathering. It's got a button placket. So I looked at that from a technical standpoint and went, right, I don't want to have anything with a really big, like a lemon-sized print, for example, because I think it's going to look weird broken into little panels. So that's sort of the first thing I start with, is I have a look at what the actual pieces are going to be sized. So is it going to chop up the pattern weirdly? And is it not really going to result in anything that actually, like, is it going to look visually very strange? So first things first. Secondly, I think about what I'm going to wear with it. So if I'm going to make trousers covered in lemons, what's that top half going to be to balance that? And also,
lovely
do I feel
confident
I'm not going to place a lemon somewhere awkward?
Yes. That's a major fabric consideration.
Please, can that be the quote from this episode?
an awkward lemon placing.
But I think it's true. You have to think about, that's going to end up with lemon boobs or whatever, you know.
I bought some Nerida Hansen fabric and it's got like these big flowers on. Well, they're like palm size, but if I get that wrong on the front,
it's going to be
yes,
yeah, it's going to be flower boobs. And the thing is, you won't know really until you finish, and then you go,
well, it's things like doing a pocket and just doing it in another bit, same fabric, but just not intentionally not pattern matching, because that would break it up. Or doing a plain pocket in a contrast over the top.
Exactly.
Or like I'm doing, I will not be making a blouse, make a skirt, because if you make a skirt in it, then you can just enjoy the pattern, is what I thought very hard before buying it about flower boob, like massive boob things. So my advice as a person who sews with a lot of pattern and a lot of colours is sometimes you just got to take the risk and try it and then go, oh poo, not going to do that again, because you can't know. And I think your eye and your brain learn to work that better and to visualise better, but you've got to kind of go through the pain barrier to get there. My other advice would be, if you're wanting to branch out into doing things like wearing lovely patterns like that and almost verging on what I would say is almost novelty print, is try some on, go in the shops in the summer, see if you can find anything, to see if it works for you, because it might be that you love the fabric, it's just not for you.
Or it's something for an accessory or for a jacket or for like a waistcoat or something like that.
And it might work much better. I would also say, and I think Sister Mintaka did this on Instagram recently, she was talking about draping and walking around like a Greek goddess. Draping, just hang the fabric over yourself and see, because as Jess says, if the pattern is a big print, the fear of cutting it up and losing that big print can be a problem, because if it's got lots of small panels, you lose the loveliness of a big print. So you might want to go for a much simpler design.
And I think sometimes with as well, there is another thing you can do. And this is if you're feeling a bit crafty, but it's something I do sometimes if I'm really not sure. If you screenshot a picture of the print and then you screenshot the front of your pattern envelope and stick them in something like Canva where you can background remove, overlay the two with your fitted trousers, because that's normally quite a good visual test. If you look at that and go, that looks a bit weird, it doesn't necessarily have to be to scale, just sort of roughly, but you're going to look at it and go, oh no, or okay, that could look all right. Like, it's quite a good, if you're the kind of person you need a bit of practice because you're not used to sewing with, or like it's something you're a bit nervous about, I find that very useful. It's something I do sometimes as well to see if patterns will go together. So sometimes I think in terms of outfit, rather than like, sometimes you'll see me doing this, I'll buy 3 fabrics in a oneer because one's going to be a skirt, one's going to be a top to go with the skirt, and one's going to, like, I often shop like that for my fabrics. So what I will do is lay them together on Canva or similar other platforms available, and I'll have a look and see if they actually go together in the way they think they're going to. But I also say we don't always get it right 100% of the time. Sometimes you put it on, you go, no.
But I might say, maybe it's just because you might never worn anything like that before, so your brain's finding it hard to process. They might actually look great.
That is
might
true.
Just be, it's so different. And again, so what might also be the thing is, it's back to what we were saying about perceptions, and it might be that you put them on and felt a little bit unsure, and all it takes is someone to say you're brave, or wow, I've never done that, and then your brain goes, oh, the thing that I thought it was is what it is, and actually maybe it's not. It's back to what we talked about when we talked about that other episode, which I can't remember which one now, that it might be that just other people wish they could do it too. So maybe just wear them at home. Get used to wearing them and get your brain used to seeing you in something different, because I think other people just obviously can see what I'm wearing right now. I have on an entire star print jumper, and if I put my legs up, matching joggers.
Sam is not going to get lost anytime soon.
No, and some people might think I'm ready. I'm dressed like a toddler and ready to go to playgroup, you know. But
I see. The thing is, though, but I think this is a great example of where I love the fabric. I couldn't wear that in a million years. It's not me. It looks stunning on you.
It's not. Yeah, but that's because, and it was really interesting the other day, I was in virtual social and I was in a black t-shirt and my black fluffy jacket, which I wear when I'm sewing because it keeps me warm.
Mm-hmm.
And partway through the virtual social, because I was having my lunch break with them all, I had to go and get changed because I was going off to a meeting. And when I came back, everyone went, "Oh, you look like you now. You didn't look like you before." So
but that's so true.
Yeah, our brains get so used to like recognizing silhouettes and things that they're not even looking at the full detail. So, you know, we can actually read a text without reading the full words. We actually look at the shapes, like we can picture the shape, like the word "the."
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, when I put this on, it fits with your brain's thoughts about what I am, but
what
your brain goes, wear. "Whoa, me!" Whoa. But do you know what? If I gave you these and asked you to wear them for a month, you might over time you might hate me at the end of the month, but over time your brain might get a bit more. I'm not suggesting you do it, by the way, but your brain would change how it felt about seeing you in them.
Well, and this is the thing though, and I'm going to throw out a tip here that comes from my non-sewing life. Recently, I did a different podcast. Sorry, Sam, I'm cheating on you in podcast terms. I did a doctoral podcast for the university all about.
I think that's worse than like Netflix cheating. That is, isn't it? You know,
just a little bit, yeah. Although it was only a one-off, so it's fine. But
no, it's not. You've done it twice.
No, the Doctoral Dialogues podcast, which if you're interested in my research, you can listen to. It's free.
And I was very jealous. That was a proper studio as well.
Yes, it was. It was great because my university has a radio recording like training course and degree and everything, and like for the journalism.
I mean, if you're going to cheat, do it properly, and you did it.
Oh yeah, my sound engineer was for Radio 2. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, he was only one step away from going to the BBC there, I think. So
it was really good fun. Anyway, one of the tips I got when I was chatting to the host of that podcast, who's just fabulous, was I was talking to her about sometimes I struggle to edit my own work if I'm too close to it. If it's gone through like 7 or 8 edits, at that point my brain is reading what's there without me reading the words. And she gave me the best tip. She was like, do you know what I sometimes do? She's like, sometimes I take a day off and I come back to my work, but I mark it like I'm marking a student's work. And I say things like, the author is clearly trying to do this. Or this, but it works because it puts your brain in a different context. So in this context, I'm going to suggest take a photo of yourself in the trousers, but crop it so you can't see it's you. And then show it to your friends and say, what do you think of these trousers?
Yeah.
And take yourself out of the equation. Because it might be, as Sam says, you're not used to it. It might be you're not confident in it and you think you look silly when you don't. It might also be that it's the wrong pattern for those trousers.
Yeah.
And that's also fine. I know I can think already of trousers that print would look brilliant in and trousers it wouldn't look brilliant in. Like, it's some of it is going to be down to the pattern itself as well. Like, and the size of the lemon and the colour of the thing, you know, like.
And it might just be it needs a pocket over the top to break it up, because sometimes you do need to break the pattern up. You know, as a big pattern person, like you can see the jumper I'm wearing, I've actually got red panels on it as well.
You do.
That's because I've had to put them in the sleeves. I was being thrifty. It was the only way I had enough fabric to get the joggers and the jumper out of it. But it could be you need to just put a pocket over that's in the plain navy, just so it doesn't feel so much of one fabric as well.
Just so it doesn't feel like you've been wallpapered. Because I do understand that feeling. I do. Sometimes a print is too strong and it makes you feel a bit overwhelmed by it. So as Sam says, contrast pockets, contrast stitching sometimes is nice. Buttons or studs, things like that just draw your eye so it looks more like a garment than fabric.
Yeah.
But also, sometimes it's best to just not wear them for a week and come at them with fresh eyes.
And wear them around the house. Where you don't feel like you're out in public. And then see how you feel after you've worn them for a week.
I made something that I hated when I first made it, and now I adore it. And I can't think what it was. What did I dislike? Do you know what? Actually, it was the chalk and notch fringe. The first time I made it, I went. Yeah, the first time I made it, I went. It wasn't. I didn't hate it, but I went. Oh, yeah. That's not quite what I thought it was going to be. And now I just made myself wear it because I was like, no, I love this fabric. I made it for my birthday. I looked back at photos and was like, I look quite cute in that. And now I adore it. My black and white spotty one, I love it. It's one of my favourite garments. I think I look great in it. I feel great in it. But it took around a month for it to really grow on me. And part of that was I made myself style it different ways. And I made myself go,
I was just going to say, have a play and a style.
What does it look like with this? Yeah. Exactly. But
right,
I'm
going to be strict now and say, at the end of the day, at the end of the day,
it is all about how you feel. Not everything's going to be a win, and that is okay. And it does take practice. So keep on sewing, keep on doing it, have a think about what we've said, and let us know how you get on as well. We would love to know whether the relationship with your lemon trousers improves, whether you've decided they're a horrendous misstep, but you've got this great pattern on this. Let us know how you get on. And for anyone else who is like, oh my God, this has been great, send us your dilemmas or send us your questions. Please. Send us stuff you want us to talk about. Send us things you struggle with. And you can just DM us to the podcast Instagram.
Yeah, that came in. I saw it today, straight in the pod. So just get your stuff in there. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, please do message us. Thank you so much, folks. We have had a great time today. It's a long one. But I think you'll agree.
We've stopped saying that now. We say it every time.
Yeah, but they just keep getting longer. But no,
please
nothing will ever be longer than episode 8. Don't forget to subscribe,
to review,
like, review, share with your sewing pals. Please leave us an actual written review. It really does make a difference because it helps us be seen by new sewists. And give us a follow on Instagram as well.
You can join us in the biscuit tin for extras and exclusives as well. Yeah,
we've got some cracking extra bonus episodes in the biscuit tin. So join us, check out our Instagram for more information on that. And your preferred platform of choice, we'll put some info in the description so you can check that out as well. So thank you so much, folks. And we will see you next time for another episode of So What's New in the Biscuit Tin.
Bye.